back, everyone. Three dudes in grad school, featuring myself, Adam Tobin, Antonio Scarvelis, Grant Johnson, and who do we have with us today?
Neil Evans.
Neil Evans. Nice to have you, man. Neil Evans is one of my physical therapy professors, also my academic advisor. Yeah.
Dr. Neil Evans, probably,
Dr.
right?
Neil Evans, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Welcome, sir. Thank you for being here today.
Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Awesome.
Excited to be here.
Give us like a little bit of an introduction. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Like I said, my name is Neil Evans. I did my undergrad here at Ohio University, actually, in biological sciences several years ago. I got my doctorate in physical therapy degree from Slippery Rock University, and then more recently finished a PhD at University of Kentucky in rehab science. I've been teaching here as faculty at Ohio University since 2020, which, as you guys may remember, was kind of a bad year.
Shout out to Rona.
Something happened that year.
Pretty much everybody.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I had kind of an odd first year and a half getting started, but starting to get settled in and feeling my groove now a little bit, I guess.
That's awesome. Sweet.
Let's go.
So you teach, but you also practice, right?
You know, I've been a PT now for going on 24 years, and I've never really been away from clinical practice more than a few weeks at any point in that time. And I've been, full-time faculty somewhere since '04. So
Wow.
I've continued to stay very clinical. I think that's important. Number one, it's important for me because I miss it if I don't do it. And so I always have had that desire to help patients and connect with patients, but I also think it helps my students. So being able to be very relevant and know what's happening, what the latest trends are, that kind of thing, I think I can bring that to students a lot better while I'm still active in clinic practice.
When did you find out that you wanted to become like an instructor as well as
Yeah.
practice?
It kind of happened sort of serendipitously, actually. So
Great vocabulary.
I never
haven't heard that word in a while.
I never really thought that I would do that, actually. So what's kind of interesting about it is when I got my PT degree, it was the DPT was very new at that time. Slippery Rock actually was the second school in the country to have a DPT accredited, and I was in the fourth graduating class with that degree. So in my area, which was a small town, I'm actually from like an hour and 20 minutes away from here. There were no other DPTs pretty much, and so there was a PTA program, physical therapy assistant program, at a university in Portsmouth, Ohio, Shawnee State University. You guys may have heard of.
Shout out SSU.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they had a need for some adjunct, and the director at that time heard that I had a doctorate, and that was like good for their program, I guess. So she reached out to me, and I started doing it as an adjunct, and I kind of liked it, and they had a full-time position open up, and long story short, I ended up applying, getting that position, and then worked as a chair there for a couple years before I moved on to I was at Marshall University from 2012 until I came here in 2020. Marshall started a DPT program, and I was one of their first faculty that they hired to kind of get that program up and going. So, I really enjoyed teaching, and at Shawnee, that's where I kind of fell in love with it. But I wanted to be able to advance a lot more. I wanted to advance not only the students more, but myself, and there's just not time in a PTA curriculum. It's 2 years, and that includes all of your, basic coursework, Englishes and maths and all that stuff. So it was tough to work around, and it was a very, I kind of made it a very challenging program for those students. So, I was better suited to move on to graduate level, I think.
Is that something that you picked up when you were a student? Did you have like a more difficult professor, but it drove you to like be a better student?
Yeah, probably. The best, I'll give a shout out to probably my favorite PT professor, Chris Hughes, Dr. Chris Hughes. He was
Shout
probably
out
one of my
Dr. Hughes.
favorites. But I definitely try and kind of model the way I teach some after him, and also some of the clinical instructors that I've had. You know, you guys are all in medical field, studying to be in a medical field. I mean, even if you don't end up being a formal professor, like you're going to teach every day. So, you know, it's just kind of part of the job. And so I think, you know, being able to do that in a large audience, the hard part is not the teaching, in my opinion. The hard part, and for what it's worth, the hardest part for me to get used to was how do you assess people, you know, and making valid exams, and you know, Adam knows about that after today.
Yeah.
But that's a challenging part. You know, the teaching part's not hard at all. That's something that's pretty natural as a clinician. You kind of learn how to do it, but assessing's a little more challenging.
Yeah. That kind of was what I was going to ask, is like, we had an exam today. How do you kind of like, obviously you have experience going to school, you have experience teaching and in the clinic, and you talked a little bit about, to our class anyway, in an email or something, about like this triangle of learning, you know, how like the very base is like 70% of knowledge, almost like the base knowledge. And then on top of that, there's 3 layers. And the second layer is like, you know, a little bit more in-depth stuff. And then the top layer is like the little pieces, like nicks and gritties and everything that like only like some people might like pull out. Like, how is that? How do you base your questions off of that? I guess for people that might be going into grad school or already in grad school, like how would you suggest, like, I guess studying, or, you know, maybe getting used to like the different types of questions, I guess?
Yeah, so that triangle you're referring to, I actually stole that from a former colleague of mine, because I thought it was great, because it basically, you know, when I'm trying to write an exam, to try and keep it fair, you want to try and make sure that you're testing over the things that are must-know things, with a little bit of nice to know, and then maybe a few just to separate the A's and the B's, perhaps, as far as like, you know, kind of what I would say like elite knowledge, or you know, more top tier things. So the vast majority of that base of the triangle is really like need to know. Like, in my opinion, that's entry level clinician. If you know everything you need to know, that's the basis. The difference between really a C student and an A student is what's above that. And if you think about your exams like that, then I think it helps you write a more valid test, and something that is fair and equitable. Because, you know, as a PT instructor, we're really we're training generalists at this point, and so it's not really fair, I don't think, to expect students to have a specialty when they, you know, take an entry-level class, right? So, you know, something that I would tell you is, as I said, I've been doing this for almost 24 years, and I'm still not ever going to be at the peak of that triangle. So I think you got to keep thinking about how do you learn, and what can you do to continue to better yourself, and be excited about that learning.
There's something about going into an exam, like, and like leaving the exam knowing that like you never knew every single question, you know. Like, do you guys have anything to say on that?
That's kind of the big thing with med school here.
Yeah.
You know, you're so used to undergrad. You're like the one that sits in the front of the classroom. You know, you're top of the class, and then you get here, and it's kind of like that Top Gun. Like, everybody is at top of the class now here.
Yeah.
You got to be comfortable with the fact that I'm not going to know everything. And I think that was a big thing. I mean, you're in first year, and I think that was one of the things. I don't know if you experienced this too, but you have to kind of get comfortable with the fact that you're not going to know everything, and you kind of have to be okay with that.
Yeah.
You know, like, obviously you want to try to know everything because you want to do well and succeed here. But there's a point where it's like, I'm not going to know.
Yeah.
You know, you're not going to get an absolute 100% on the exams. You got to be okay with that.
Yeah.
I like what he said too, because I've started to use that in my everyday studying and learning, and when we take an exam. But he's been practicing for over 24 years, and he's still not at the top of the top, right? So there's always like some sort of goal, or, you know, peak of the mountain that we can strive for. So when I started kind of emphasizing that in my studying and my process of doing like medical school, like the light bulb kind of switched for me, and you actually kind of almost begin to succeed a little bit better because you're not worried about maybe every little detail. You're just trying to like scope out the main concepts that you can be a generalist. I liked that term. So,
And there's always something to like work on.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like after every exam, you know, we're in the second year now, and we've had a lot of exams under our belt. But after every exam, it's like I could have done this different, this different, this different. You know, you compound it where you walk away with something that you can take away from it. And I feel like that never satisfied. You can keep something that you can take away to keep being better and better, and that compounds over time for success.
Yeah, you know, one of the hardest things I think for students when they come to grad school is they think, you know, there's a black and white answer. And in reality, there's very seldom is there a black and white answer. There's a lot of gray. And you got to try and be able to, you know, weed through everything from, you know, what the patient's personal factors are, where they live, what their enjoyment out of life is, and treat that person and not just, you know, one of the things I like to say is, you know, a lot of times patients don't read the textbook, right? So
They
you're
never
gonna
do.
you're gonna have a patient that, you know, you think, oh, this should be a shoulder rotator cuff or whatever, and it's like, oh man, but this sign is not really matching up with what I expect. Well, you know, it's not always going to be black and white like that.
Right.
You know?
So do you find that the consistency of like utilizing your knowledge and constantly trying to learn, that prepares you well for those oddball cases or those oddball patients?
Oh, I love them. Yeah, that's what I love. Like that's what's so fun to me about being a clinician is being able to see the ones that I didn't always know, and like, can I figure it out? You know, because that's the ones you remember, is the ones that you're like, hey, I'm not exactly sure. This doesn't really look like anything that I would expect to see. But, you know, if I go back to my basics and I think about, okay, what's my anatomy? What's my physiology? What kind of movement mechanism did they have? Can I piece something together that makes sense? And I think those are the ones that are, you know, when it doesn't, that's when you got something that's really kind of exciting for me, as far as being able to say, hey, this is a diagnosis, right?
I see.
Not usually exciting for the patient in that case, because it's usually something pretty bad. But yeah, the patients that I remember, the ones that, you know, year after year I end up talking about in school are the ones that, you know, weren't what you expected, right? It's the ones, even things that I had never even heard of before, that you end up, you know, kind of falling on and being like, hey, this is, you know, this diagnosis from this order from this doctor says that it's carpal tunnel, and it's not carpal tunnel. Mm-hmm. I know for a fact it's not carpal tunnel, so what is it? Like, how do you go about that? And the only way really to do it's kind of go back to your basics. Mm-hmm. Understand anatomy. That's really, that's why I love it so much.
Yeah. It's a lot of anatomy hammered in the first summer all at once.
Median nerve.
Yeah. So, I mean, you talked about like your experience, like lecturing and being a professor and everything. So, and I guess you're talking a little bit now about like in the profession. So, like, is there any like personal philosophies like yourself, or like when a patient walks in, like, is there any, I guess, personal things that you kind of implement within like your treatment? I know you talked to us about the Big Four.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to touch on that, but
Yeah, I love the Big Four. The Big Four is kind of, I don't know, I kind of just make stuff up sometimes. But
My roommate Olivia, she said, she's also in physical therapy school.
Yeah.
She said, hello, Olivia Alexander, shout out. Like,
Yeah.
she's a big fan of the Big Four. So.
Is she? Good. Everyone should be. Because quite honestly, I mean, whether you realize it or not, we use the Big Four all the time. And so the way that kind of came about, actually, was I used to teach some continuing education courses for a couple different companies, and you know, one of them was about therapeutic exercise and in specifically geriatric population. And I got to thinking about it, and I started like thinking about, you know, all these different exercises for geriatrics. I'm like, you know, like I pretty much treat every condition using these same basic positions, these same basic you know, strategies to gain strength in these major muscle groups. And we can really boil it down to 4 exercises. So really all you got to know is 4 exercises. Okay? You know 4 exercises, then it's just a matter of adapting those exercises to meet that patient's needs. And so if they can't do one of the exercises as you would think about the exercise, then you just adapt it to what they can succeed in. And so then we can talk about, well, how do you adapt it? How might you regress an exercise? And to me, that goes back to development. And if you watch a baby develop and how they progress from, being first born, when they lay on their back, they're all curled up in a ball, and, how they get into extension and how they then start to improve postural muscles and go from a supine or laying on their back position to a complete upright position. How can you progress somebody along there? Because really they do that in a way. Yeah, it's a lot of nervous system development that's happening, but they also are gaining strength. They're also building movement patterns and so on that goes along with that neural development. And so it kind of makes sense to me that if somebody can't do a squat, if they can't stand up out of a chair, which is a squat that's supported at the bottom end of the squat, then what can they do? And can I strengthen those same muscles in maybe a supine position? And you guys would know that as a bridge exercise probably, but if you think about it, that's
Like
what
that.
it is.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. A bridge is strengthening your quads and your hamstrings, your glutes, just like a squat does. It just requires less stability
Yeah. So
from the patient.
So we got a squat.
I was gonna
Squat
say,
it-
what are the
squat.
4?
Yeah,
For
so,
me and anybody listening,
guys-
I do not know what the
Do you
big
guys want to guess or no? You already know
A
squats.
squat's one
Squat.
of them.
Push up.
push, probably
A plank.
Plank.
plank, 4, pull. Yeah,
That's a
something
very
in
good
that.
guess, and I've actually seen something from another CE course, and I kind of wonder if this person actually attended my course and then went on to teach a course. But they included my 4 exercises and then added a push and a pull.
Okay.
So that's not bad. That's
Big
not bad. You're
5.
thinking along the right way. But what I would do with the pull is say, you can out of these positions, you can push or pull.
Is it something to do with your arms?
I'm thinking extension. You were talking about baby, so something extension with the back.
I mean, all of them are actually kind of an extended posture. I'll just tell you. So a lunge,
like the
is a big 4.
Lunge.
And so what you guys think of as a lunge, right? You just did leg day, so can't really get up.
No,
But
not at all.
So a lunge you think of as a lunge has a dynamic component. So there's a loading and an unloading component to a lunge. But if you really break down what that is, it's a step that we take when we walk. Every step we take when we walk is a lunge. You're just not loading it as deep as what you would if you're trying to really target strengthening. So it's a basic functional movement. So I have to include a lunge. And so a lunge position I think is very important. I'll do a lot of core work out of that position, a lot of, working quads, glutes, hams, so on. Same thing with single leg standing, which is the other one. So single leg standing is during that mid stance, you're in a single leg and you have to maintain balance. And so the single leg stance is really what we would call frontal plane, right? So that's where it controls that frontal plane motion. And then where it gets real fun with these big 4 exercises is when you start combining them. So you do like a single leg squat or a lunge position, split leg squat, or, multiple angles and things like that. So I do I got in my practice, which is called shout out Body Works Physical Therapy and Chiropractic.
Body
Shout
works.
out.
Come on. Where's it at?
It's in Russell, Kentucky.
Russell, Kentucky.
Yeah,
Across the border.
Two real good buddies of mine. One guy I actually taught as a PTA student and a PT student, graduated in the first class at Marshall, and then a real good friend of mine, Dr. Profit. Jeremy Stevenson and myself, we started Bodyworks a year and a half ago, and I really kind of specialize in the training of kids, like training athletes. So it's kind of just a hobby more for me than anything.
That's cool.
And so I work a lot with junior high and high school level athletes. And what's kind of funny is there's one of my former students is going to probably start doing a little bit of training, and I had her come down and watch me yesterday, and I'm taking her through taking these kids through their program and stuff, and I said, so what do you notice here, since we're talking about the Big Four? And she's like, what do you mean? I'm like, Big Four, Big Four, Big Four. Like everything I do is in the Big Four. Like it's not a joke. Like people think, man, that's so simplistic. How can you possibly think you can treat everybody like that? Because you do. Like you literally can.
Yeah.
And if you simplify it like that, it doesn't have to be that hard. You just have to be able to then modify it.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting of like talking about this Big Four is something you said about 5 minutes ago with tackling a harder case or an abnormal case, but you go back to that basics.
Yeah.
So it's a common theme here. This
Exactly.
game.
And so that's really, you know, that's what she said, you know, and I would ask her, I kind of put her on the spot. I'm like, you know, I need 3 exercises in this little circuit we're going to do. Tell me what 3 exercises you want me to do. She's like, oh, you put me on the spot. I'm like, just like you said.
What do you think, Adam?
Go back.
Single leg
Go back
squat.
go back.
Correct.
Yeah. Go back to the Big Four and like let's work out of that, right?
Yeah.
So squat,
Yeah.
lunge,
Yeah.
core, plank,
Plank.
and then
Single leg stands.
Single leg
single leg
stance.
stance.
So would you say for the viewers, listeners out there that maybe they're just trying to get into exercise or they're just trying to basically build some strength, is that a good foundational concept too?
Absolutely. Yep.
There you
Absolutely. And so again, depending on the age, depending on what their functional level is, you just adapt it. So like I mentioned, you have somebody that can't do a squat. Like if they can't do an eccentric component where they're lowering and they're doing a proper squat with good form without pain, well, you just work on sit to stands. And you know, there's some good evidence out there that has really linked people who are unable to do sit to stands from a chair. If you can't do more than 7 of those in 30 seconds, you're at increased risk for falling. And so you take something like that, now this becomes a predictor of how well they're going to function and whether or not they're going to be safe to go home.
Wow. It's just crazy. Like PT school's a lot more, because I had to talk with my buddy about this. It's like you would think, it's like, all right, you know this exercise, and like how can we progress it, make it harder to where it targets those muscles and everything. But when really it's just quite the opposite, you know, like how can you make any exercise accessible for any population? Like if you just had a ligament sprain 2 or 3 days ago compared to, you know, Olympic athlete. But yeah, it's just crazy how like I always thought it was like, how do I make this harder instead of how do I make it easier? But that's a huge part of the profession. So.
Yeah, that's a good point, because I think I've definitely found over the years that students always have a harder time regressing exercise than progressing exercise. So it's really something that, you know, if you take those basic motions, those basic movements, there's things that you're going to need to be able to do to make them easier and things that would make them very challenging. You know, some of my athletes that I train are better athletes than I am, you know, and so I had a clinical instructor once. He said, you got to be able to do 2 or 3 repetitions. And after that, you're going to end up training people better than you. And we were, you know, at that facility, we were training professional athletes, actually future Hall of Famers.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, Dermonti Dawson actually was one of my, I worked with Dermonti Dawson.
Let's
Sweet.
go.
Wow.
But yeah, it was pretty cool. But the, you know, obviously he's a way better athlete than I am. And these kids, a lot of these kids are way better athletes than I am. At least, you know, maybe not when I was in my prime. But now that I got a little age on me, they are.
What
Sure, he
sports-
can go play D-line for Ohio State right now. Look at his jersey. Come on.
What sports did you play?
Yeah.
Played football and track in high school. I didn't do anything in college.
Okay.
What events in track did you do?
I was discus, and I did the big boy relays.
Very
There
nice.
you go.
Back in the day.
Did having a sports background kind of get you into physical therapy?
Yeah, I think so. I really, physical therapy to me was kind of like a big reason that I did it, I think, was because my sister actually is also a physical therapist. She's older than me. She's 8 years older than I am. To be quite honest, I had no idea when I was in high school really what I wanted to do. I didn't really like school. I didn't really know. Like, I just wanted to be able to have a job. and I did not have a lot of motivation to say, hey, you know, I'm a go-getter. That was not me at that time in my life. So, you know, now that I'm a parent of kids that age, and you know, I got 2 boys that are seniors and a junior in high school, and you know, I'm like, you need to know what to do, but I just got to keep telling myself, you know, I didn't know what I was doing.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
But yeah, so I honestly just kind of did it out of default because I didn't know what else to do, and my dad said I had to have a major, even though I really didn't, but he claimed I did. So I just put down pre-physical therapy, and biology was kind of the way to go back then. And then really what kind of sold it for me was after fall break, I went and hung out with my sister, and I literally was there like, you know, 40 hours a week for 4-6 weeks over that break, and just loved it. Like, I did way more than I was supposed to do. And like, I loved the patients. I worked with all the different therapists and all different levels. And that's when I was like, yeah, this is for me. This is what I want to do. And so then it's just a matter of, you know, suck it up and get through all those
Yeah.
OChem classes. And
Yeah. I never had to take OChem, which is, thank goodness. But
Lucky.
yeah.
OChem is awful.
But you,
Shout out to OChem being awful.
Shout it out,
Yeah.
man. Shout embrace the suck.
yeah. Dude, who said that? One of my professors in undergrad or someone was like, best embrace the suck. I don't know.
It's like, well, shout out Marty Zimmer. He always says that at medical school.
You know, have you ever read, it was like chop wood and carry a water or something? It's some motivational book. It's about learning the process of learning to love the process. It was Dr. Brian Handel had a teams with the Ortho Club last year, and it was basically learning to love the struggle of it through the good times, the bad times. Like, this is what you want to do. You gotta learn to love the suck. Literally, it's just because what else? You're in the grind. It's not gonna be easy.
Yeah, that's the part. That's what makes it. Like, that's the stuff you'll miss. It's the part that sucks now, but that's what that's what you'll miss. And if you talk to people as they graduate and move on from grad school, you know, that's why they're going to miss it. They're going to miss the people, the relationships, the, you know, getting through all that stuff that they hated doing, right? At the time, they hated it, but man, it's like that just becomes part of you, and you just love it.
Did you ever look back and think, like, because I'm trying to really, like, although, like, you know, I might be stressed about studying for whatever tissue mechanics exam or whatever it might be, but, like, at the end of the day, like, you really have to, we talked about in another episode, you really have to find joy in the journey, even if it is hard, which sometimes it's really hard to, but do you ever, like, I mean, do you miss it? Like, just looking back, do you wish you would have really
Reflected more on that.
soaked in the moment more, I guess?
Yeah, so I mean, I can't say I didn't have a lot of fun in school. I definitely had fun. I enjoyed my time. That's probably one of my best times of my life. You know, there's certainly been others, my kids, my wife, that the courting, you know, dating my wife.
Hey, shout out to the courting out there.
The that's my heel jack in me coming out. But yeah, that, you know, there's a lot of other things that kind of stand out. But you know, I just think back, like, how much if I would have actually worked harder. Like, I just think back, like, I don't remember a lot that I learned in school. I remember a lot that I learned since school. I remember a lot in my clinicals, and I obviously knew some stuff when I got to my clinicals because I did well. But, like, that's not really what stands out to me. What stands out to me is that patient interaction and how I've kind of learned since then. And, you know, when I started actually getting into formal teaching, and you go back and you read textbooks that I studied from, I'm like, this has always been in here.
That light bulb moment.
Yeah.
Oh,
Gotta open the textbook.
that happens to me all the time in medical school.
Yeah.
Looking back on college, I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, this is why this enzyme or blah 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 does this. I'm like,
It's in here, but, like, it's almost like you just
yeah.
completely forgot or something.
yeah, exactly.
And with our spiral curriculum, when you
Oh,
see
and
it
then,
again,
yeah.
it's like, oh,
HCOM too.
I've seen this 3 times. Now it's clicking.
Excellent. Yeah.
Like, this is stuff we learned
And you're
first
like,
semester.
Oh, it's
This is-
actually working.
I'm in second year now. Now it makes sense. Like, when we did the heart, it was like, it took the 3rd go around to understand the actual physiology. It was like, oh,
Yeah.
it actually makes sense.
Yeah.
Got it. That's what I love about I mean, I think this like PT like curriculum, like the way it's set up, I really like. I can't speak for everyone obviously, but I really like it. Just the fact like it seems like everything that we're learning is overlapping in some sort of way. Like we heard it here, it's like, oh, we can finally put it together here. It might make sense in another class compared to another one. But yeah, but speaking on like what you were saying, like something about getting hands-on experience, like you just never forget that. Like it's one thing to read it in the notes or in the textbook, but hands-on experience is definitely, it just sticks with you. So,
Yeah, because that's your relationships, right? I mean, that's really what it's all about.
right.
That's why I think this profession, medical profession in general, is so good, because you have, as medical providers, we have the opportunity really to interact with people when they are most vulnerable, when they are hurting, when they're seeking help, and we're able to bring some sort of comfort and give them some pain relief, or even just a shoulder sometimes to cry on and listen to them and take them seriously. I mean, that's really, that human connection is what I think is that I love more than anything.
Would you say that's the most rewarding part of your job?
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I mean, there's a lot of things. I think, it's flexible, right? I mean, I can basically do anything I want to do, especially with as many degrees and things that I have now. I could
We're
work
training kids
about
too.
anywhere.
Yeah, that's cool.
And I love it. Like, I love being able to do that. And I had a moment actually with a kid not long ago. Some of the kids, they're just kind of, oh man, they complain a little bit. It's not. I'm not feeling it every day,
soft.
right?
Yeah.
But there was this one kid, and he was he's a little out of shape when he started, and he was struggling a lot, having a hard time like keeping up, and I was kind of pushing him, and he was fighting through it. He was working hard, and I just kind of got like to his level and just was like, talking to him, encouraging him, talking about, this is, you can do this, kind of coaching him, motivating him a little bit. And it was awesome. Like, it was awesome. We had, we were doing a plank, right? Big four. And I had him holding it for like 30 seconds, 40 seconds, whatever. And he was struggling. I was like, don't think about it. Like, sing a song, sing Jesus Loves Me. And he's like, I don't know Jesus Loves Me. So we like sang Jesus Loves Me together. And guess what? Jesus Loves Me takes 40 seconds.
No way.
It really does. I did not know that, but it did. It was exactly 40 seconds. So, stuff like that was just like, it was pretty cool. And then, his mom comes up to me afterwards and she's like, you are very good at what you do. I'm like, thanks. I really appreciate that.
That's awesome.
Because that's what it's about, that connection. And that kid, literally at this point, like, he would run through a wall for me. I'm not
fired
asking him
up.
to do
I'm
that
fired
yet.
up listening to that.
But this week, maybe I'll have him do it.
There you go.
Yeah.
Run through the wall.
Glass.
Jesus saved him on those planks, man.
You're like a Kool-Aid man busting through.
Adam showed me your logo for the practice that he
Oh,
Yeah.
body
owns.
yeah.
And obviously it has the cross in there. So I didn't know if you want to touch on a little bit of how going through your training and just your life in general, how that's impacted your just interacting with patients, people every day.
So Bodyworks is spelled with an X, and the X is written in red.
Throw a logo up.
It's
Natalia,
thrown,
throw it
it's
up there.
kind of
Shout out.
sideways. If you turn your head just a little bit, you can tell that it's meant to be a cross. I mentioned my two business partners. All of us are men of faith, and I think we take that very seriously, and we take the fact that we have an opportunity to interact with people on that level, and really just do a mission where we are trying to help people get better, feel better. Our mission statement, vision statement is feel better, move better, so you can live better. And all those things, I think, go hand in hand. And part of that is your spiritual well-being. I mean, it's the only practice I know of that will just pray with our patients. We have a prayer box in our lobby that they can put in prayer requests, and if somebody puts in a prayer request for us, then we check that every day. We take those prayer requests, we take a picture of it, send it out to the group chat, and all of us just have a prayer for that person or whatever that situation is. So I think it's, it definitely is something that impacts how I treat patients and what I feel like my responsibility is.
It's kind of like that mind, body, spirit that we talk
Yeah.
about at school.
Osteopathic, man.
Being
Yep.
the holistic part, keeping the mind good keeps the body good.
Yep,
And
absolutely.
I think that's really, really impactful for patients because you don't see that often, especially in the healthcare field.
Yeah,
But I
a
see
lot
it.
of people are like scared to talk about it.
Yeah.
Quite honestly, I mean, I think you have to respect people. I mean, I'm not going to push my
100%.
faith on someone, but and I just ask them. I'm a man of faith. I'd like to pray with you. Are you okay with that? If they say no, then okay. But I've never had anybody tell me no.
Yeah. Plant the seed.
Yeah.
I love
I want to go to Body Works, man.
Man, I want to run through a wall.
I need some treatment.
Come on down.
Yeah.
I guess kind of going back to PT because I don't really know how the structure is. I'm in
Yeah.
the med school lens. So how does one become a physical therapist? Like what is it undergrad? Then I guess from undergrad, is there any like entry tests and then once the school and then like boards, like how do specialty, what does the journey look like?
I think pretty much. I think every school, pretty certain every school now is a doctor of physical therapy degree, or DPT. So, it's a clinical doctorate. We're not. We don't train researchers. We don't train. We train students hopefully to be able to critically review research. But it's not a PhD or EDD. Nothing like that. It's a clinical degree. But they have to have bachelors typically to get in, or they would at least have to demonstrate that they are going to have a bachelor's, right, by the time that our program were to start. And then, like at OU, I can speak specifically, we start in the summer, and it's a 9-semester program, and we don't get like a full break. We get little breaks, but you pretty much go year-round. 9 semesters, and then so after 3 years you're finished. And they graduate in May after 3 years, and then so there is no exam to get in. You get in based on your merit from your undergrad degree. So we look a lot at GPA, but we also have kind of a holistic admission process where we have students do an interview and try and get to know students a little bit. It's hard to do when you have like 200 people that you're trying to get to know a little bit, but
Right.
we try and ask some questions about like what their experiences are, and try and get to know like, did they have extracurriculars? Did they have, were they involved in clubs? Were they, how social are they? How can they communicate? That kind of stuff. And then, we accept our class, and that's kind of how they do it. And then in order to become a licensed physical therapist in any state, in the United States anyway, that you have to pass a board exam. The board exam is 200 questions that count. There's another 50 questions that are like test questions, I think, during the exam, but you don't know which ones those are. And then it's a weighted score. There is not currently a practical portion to that. There's some talk that may change in the future, but as of now, it's just a computer-based multiple choice exam.
Straight from the book.
2027. It's going to be a special year.
Yeah.
All three of
All three of
us
us.
graduating.
Yeah, that's
27.
awesome.
Yeah.
And then after you graduate, you take the board exam, and then you graduate. And then is there any like if you want to get into a specialty?
Specialty, yeah.
How does
So,
that work?
well, there's kind of two routes actually. So, PT's a little behind medical school as far as specialties go. We have residencies. There are residencies of various specialties, like in orthopedics, sports, geriatrics, neurology, women's health, a bunch more that I'm forgetting, cardiopulmonary, wound care, like different stuff, right? There's like, I don't know. I don't even know how many, so I'm not even going to try and say. But they have these specialties that you can go do a residency for, and if you do a residency, those usually last a year and a half at the most. Then you can sit for a board exam for that specialty. However, you don't have to do a residency. You can just log hours. So if, like, for example, I have OCS, which is orthopedic clinical specialty, and I did not do a residency. You just had to have, I just had to have, I don't even remember, 2,000 hours or something like that, 2,000 hours in orthopedics, and you just had to, like, be able to document that you saw a bunch of different diagnoses and that kind of thing, and then you can sit for the test.
I didn't even know that.
Awesome. He's learning.
I knew about dry needling. I knew about, whatever other things you can get. I knew there was specialties, obviously, but
When you say specialization, like, to me, that's like being specialized in one of these treatment areas. What Adam's referring to, like dry needling, that is just like a continuing ed course, usually. And they may do like a check off, but that's, you're paying a company in order to quote unquote credential you. They're going to pass you, right? I mean, it's not like a difficult thing. Like a board exam, specialization, like the OCS test that I took, it's a hard test. I mean, you gotta know your stuff.
yeah.
But to get dry needling certified, you basically go to a weekend course, and
That's that.
Olivia's doing that this weekend.
yeah, they're actually
awesome.
hosting it here.
Yep.
Yeah, tomorrow through Sunday, I think.
Dude, I would do that.
You should.
Third year, you'll be able to do it.
You talked about the big four.
Mm-hmm.
What's your big four for life to leave the listeners and the
Oh.
viewers? That's a hard question.
That's a good one.
but-
Yeah, it
That's
is.
a good one.
Well, I think you guys actually talked about it. I think last episode or episode before that, when you talk about, finding that joy. I think that's kind of key. Finding joy in what you do. Don't make work be work. Make it something that is, something that you look forward to. Like I said, going to be, when I train these kids, it's more like a hobby to me than it is a job. So I think that's really kind of key. And I think trying to find a balance, which is really hard for me because, it's hard to wear 5-6 hats at the same time. Be a husband, be a father, be a Christian, be a therapist, be a professor, be a, all these things. It's easy to get distracted. And so having time to make sure that you can stay focused is important. Knowing what your priorities are and how to keep that there.
How to keep it
I don't
in
know if
balance.
that's four. I don't know if that's
Oh,
four.
it's a lot. I love
like
it.
that. I
It's
like
enough.
that.
Win.
That's all
It's
that matters.
enough.
Yeah.
What's important now?
Yeah, exactly.
I can do all things.
Awesome, man.
Thank you for being here, Professor.
Thank you. Any
Yeah.
any fun plans coming up?
Actually, going on this Saturday and next Saturday both. I'm taking my son to a game day visit for football. So he's
sweet.
he's
go.
a senior, plays linebacker, trying to play in college.
Let's go.
He wants to be an engineer, so we're going to Rose Holman.
Oh, they were in my
Oh.
they were in our conference.
Heartland Collegiate
I played
Athletic.
basketball. Adam played soccer at Defiance.
Yeah.
Defiance is in they're in the same
Yep.
conference.
Well, they're in NAIA
yeah.
now, but they've just left this season's their first season out of it. But,
Okay.
It's a smart school there.
Yeah,
It's
they're
nice. It's nice.
2,000 engineering students. Yeah. So that's what he wants to do. So I think he'd fit in well there. And then we're going to Case Western next weekend, actually.
Sweet.
So-
Cleveland.
Same thing.
Awesome.
Awesome.
it is.
Well, good
Very
luck to
nice.
him, and
Absolutely.
it's worth it, man. College athletics is worth it.
Got that right.
Yeah.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, appreciate you guys having me.
thanks.
I'll have to have you on my podcast whenever we get it up and going.
Bring me on.
All
man.
right.
Yeah.
Student
That'll be good.
Shout
perspective.
him out.
We love that.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Love
Let's
it.
go.
We're going to do it. Our podcast is going to be called Aches and Pains.
How to,
Body works.
Body
how to
works.
heal the body. Yep.
Yeah.
I love it.
And it's our goal really is to try and bring education, like top-notch education, talk about how to make people feel better, how to move better, how to live better,
Yeah.
and explain it in a way that our patients are able to understand it, and bring it to them in a way that makes sense to them. Something, again, that my partners and I are pretty passionate about. So
Stay tuned.
I think the first episode should be called The Big Four.
I'm not even the talker in the group, believe it or not.
Oh, yeah?
So, yeah.
That's all right. I'm not either, so believe it or not.
I could tell.
I can tell. Yeah. Well, sweet. Thanks so much
man.
for coming on.
All right.
Appreciate it.
As for Grant, Antonios, and myself, thanks once again for tuning in. Stay tuned. Hit the subscribe button. Do what you need to do. Share with your friends. And, yeah, we'll see you guys for the next one.
Stay sweet.
Come on, stay sweet.
Stay sweet. I like that.
The big four.
The squats definitely got me off the big four. I don't know if I can get up.